Hey everyone and welcome. My name's Noah Zerby. I'm a professor in the Department of Politics at Humboldt State University. In this video series, we're going to be looking at the defining features of the American political system from a comparative perspective. This video will introduce some of the key concepts we'll use moving forward. In later videos, we'll consider some of the specific elements that make the US system unique, and some of those elements which overlap with other political systems around the world, including things like electoral and legislative systems, political culture, and other features. In his classic text Democracy in America, published in 1835, the French political analyst Alexis de Tocqueville wrote, "The position of the Americans, therefore, is quite exceptional, and it may be believed that no democratic people will ever be placed in a similar one. Let us cease then to view all democratic nations under the example of the American people." This is an interesting quote. Americans often view the US political system as unique or even exceptional, and often hold that the American political system is an exemplar for other countries to follow. We see this elsewhere. In his 1690 lecture, A Model of Christian Charity, John Winthrop called the Massachusetts Bay Colony a city upon a hill, echoing Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and articulating the idea of an American exceptionalism. That idea, that the United States is an exceptional country and should serve as a model for the rest of the world, is deeply embedded in the American collective self-image and in popular culture. This idea is often referred to as American exceptionalism, and we'll explore that in another video. Now, there's an element of truth in the idea that the United States is distinctive in some important ways. Countries, even in the so-called advanced industrial democracies, can differ in important ways. Electoral systems can tabulate votes differently, branches of government, particularly the executive and legislative branches, can be structured differently, political culture and values and outlooks differ, constitutions offer different protections for civil, political, and economic rights, and so on. And yet, despite these differences, countries can still all be democratic or all be democracies. And so it's important to start with some basic concepts and some foundational definitions. Let's start with some of the basics. What do we mean by democracy? The root of democracy comes from the Greek word demokratia, a combination of words which means demos, or the people, and kratos, meaning rule. At the time, around 500 BCE in some Greek city-states like Athens, the citizens, which did not include women, slaves, foreigners, or a number of others, participated directly in the decisions around governance of the city. They met regularly to make policies, decide on laws, and take all other actions necessary for governance. Today, we would think of this as a sort of form of direct democracy. And while the founders took inspiration from the ancient Greek idea of democracy in crafting the American Republic, it's important to remember that democracy was not unique to ancient Greece. Different forms of democratic governance were practiced in hunter-gatherer communities, on the Indian subcontinent, in Rome, and among the indigenous peoples of North America. In its modern form, we normally associate democracy most closely with the idea of representative democracy, the notion that we elect people to make decisions on our behalf. In the United States, at the national level, we elect our representatives and senators to the US Congress, and we elect the president. Other modern democracies also elect representatives. We can contrast this with the idea of direct democracy, where the people make the rules and decisions directly themselves, rather than through elected representatives. Political scientists generally differentiate between democracies and other forms of government, including monarchies, where political power is inherited, generally passed from parent to child, and even within the monarchies, we can differentiate between traditional or absolute monarchies, like those practiced across much of Europe in the Middle Ages, and the constitutional monarchies today, which maintain a royal family as a ceremonial head of state, but have elected representatives to perform the actual work of governing. Examples of this might include the United Kingdom, Belgium, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates, among others. Dictatorships exist where political power is concentrated in a person or group, which usually exercises and maintains its power through oppression. Note that dictatorships can operate on both the left and the right end of the political spectrum. Thus, both Nazi Germany, far right, and the Soviet Union, far left, were examples of dictatorships. Fascism is a specific form of dictatorship which combines authoritarian ultranationalism and strong state regulation of society and the economy in broader service of a political objective. Examples of such systems include Nazi Germany, Italy, and Spain during World War II. And finally, theocracies are states in which governance is performed in the name of a deity or a god, usually by priests and other religious figures. Iran is an example of a contemporary theocracy. For our purposes, we'll focus only on democracies. So, what makes a democracy a democracy? When I ask this question in class, the most common answer I get is voting in elections. This reliance on voting in elections as a marker of democracy is both right and wrong. It's right in that voting in elections are an important procedural element of representative democracy. It's wrong in the sense that many non-democratic states hold elections in an effort to legitimate their political systems. Elections were common in the Soviet Union, and even today, North Korea holds regular elections and boasts higher rates of voter turnout than the United States. Yet I think few would argue that those states are truly democratic in any meaningful sense of the word. In his classic text, Democracy and Its Critics, Robert Dahl argues that no country has ever achieved democracy in its ideal form, that is, a system completely responsive to all citizens. But we can nevertheless identify several features which make a country more democratic. According to Dahl, these include effective and meaningful participation. Citizens have adequate and equal opportunity to form preferences, to debate those preferences, and to place questions on the public agenda before any decision is made. It also includes voting equality. Each citizen is assured that their judgment or vote will be counted in equal weight to those of others. It includes enlightened understanding, the idea that citizens enjoy ample and equal opportunity for discovering and affirming their choices and interests, and it rests on the idea that control of the agenda rests with the people who decide which political matters are important and what should be brought up for debate and deliberation. It also demonstrates inclusiveness. Citizens are equal and everyone has a legitimate stake in the political process. Taken together, these criteria, according to Dahl, provide the foundation for polyarchy, a system of government that is largely responsive to the collective will of the people. In practice, countries we think of as democracies today satisfy Dahl's criteria for polyarchy in various ways. They share a common set of features that includes elected officials chosen competitively by the people through free and fair elections, which are based on inclusive suffrage, permitting all citizens to vote and, if they so choose, also to run for office. Political rights, most importantly the right to free expression, are protected, and people have access to a wide array of alternative sources of information, most often operationalized through a free and independent press. And they also have associational autonomy, that is, the right to form political and interest groups in a free civil society. The Economist regularly produces a study of the level of democracy in countries around the world, which it bases on an index that includes a number of metrics, including electoral processes, the protection of civil liberties, functioning government and political participation, and the political culture in countries around the world. Based on these measures, it classifies countries into four broad categories. The first are full democracies, where civil liberties and political freedoms are respected by the government and reinforced by a political culture conducive to democratic principles. Flawed democracies, where free and fair elections take place and basic civil liberties are protected, but where the full practice of democracy is inhibited by an underdeveloped political culture, low levels of political participation, or problems in functioning of government or governance. Hybrid regimes, where regular electoral fraud prevents the full practice of free and fair democracy. Such countries may suffer from government pressure on opposition groups, the lack of an independent judiciary, corruption, harassment of the media, limited rule of law, or other factors which severely limit the practice of democracy in the country. And finally, authoritarian regimes, which are often absolute monarchies or dictatorships where political pluralism is severely limited or non-existent. Such countries often suffer from severe infringement or abuses of civil liberties, electoral fraud, state-owned media, censorship, and suppression of criticism of the government. According to The Economist, in 2020, 23 countries representing about 8% of the world's population, and shown in dark green here, were full democracies. Another 52 countries representing about 41% of the world's population and are shown in light green here were flawed democracies. According to The Economist, the United States was in this category. Another 35 countries with about 15% of the world's population, and shown in yellow on this map, were hybrid regimes, and 57 countries with about 36% of the world's population, and shown in the various shades of orange and red here, were authoritarian regimes. The Economist's analysis is interesting because it allows us to compare countries both against one another, but also with themselves over time. Comparing between countries, we can see that the United States ranked 25th in the world in 2020, falling behind other such countries like Norway, Canada, Germany, Uruguay, Chile, Costa Rica, Mauritius, and South Korea. But equally interestingly, we can see how the US rankings have changed over time. The Economist uses factors we mentioned before to create an index, which ranks countries on a scale from 1 to 10. In theory, a perfect democracy would score 10, and a perfectly authoritarian state would score 1. In practice, the highest country rating in 2020, that is, the most democratic country in the world according to The Economist, was Norway with a score of 9.87 out of 10, and the least democratic country was North Korea with a score of 1.08 out of 10. Consider the change in these three examples over time. Canada, ranked as the 5th most democratic country in the world and characterized as a full democracy, increased slightly over time in their rating. Mexico, which has been a flawed democracy through the entire period, saw their ratings increase slightly in the early 2000s before falling after 2012. But the US trajectory is particularly interesting. According to The Economist rankings, a score above 8.0 is indicative of a full democracy, while a score from 6.0 to 7.9 is indicative of a flawed democracy. The United States rating began to fall after 2014, and the rate of decline increased after 2016, dragging the US down from a ranking of a full democracy into the category of a flawed democracy, according to The Economist. We'll consider the implications of these developments and the comparisons they raise in another video, but that's it for now. Be sure to check out the other videos in this series and leave any questions you have in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.